Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Select Board meeting of October 2nd, 2017 to order. I would ask that anybody who comes to speak, please come up to the chair, speak into the microphone in a loud, clear voice so that everybody both here, but also who's listening on CCTV, Channel 9, can hear. Jane Hotchkiss, who is the chair of the board, is out tonight. She had her knee replacement and is having some pain medication and thought it best to do that at home rather than here. So I will entertain a motion for a selection of the chair pro tem.
I move to appoint Tom McCain Chair Pro Tem.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I think now we have to elect a clerk pro tem.
Nominate Alice Kaufman to be Clerk Pro Tem.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The consent agenda consists of the town accountant warrants, the minutes from July the 10th, gift acceptances from Michael Lanigan of amount of $618 to the Concord Public Works tree gift account, and the Sudbury Valley trustees in the amount of $541.75 to the Assabet and Concord River Signs gift account. We also have a proclamation which I will read in recognition of the 20th anniversary of Nanai, am I saying that correctly? Japan, Sister City 20th anniversary. Town of Concord and Town of Nanai, Sister City 20th Anniversary Proclamation, whereas the Town of Concord wishes to recognize the Town of Nanai, Japan, on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the relationship between our two communities, and whereas the frequent exchange of students, teachers, government officials, and citizens has enriched both our towns and expanded our knowledge of each other, and whereas we commend those in Nanai and Concord who have worked tirelessly for so many years to maintain this special connection of people from around the globe. And whereas we hope those involved will continue the friendship and collaboration which has made this relationship so successful. And now therefore be it proclaimed that the members of the Select Board of the Town of Concord, on behalf of the citizens of Concord, celebrates the 20th anniversary of our relationship with the town of Nanai, Japan, and urge all citizens to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Proclaimed this second day of October 2017.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So done.
Could I note, Tom, that our friends from Nanai will be visiting the town this week. And I think they're meeting with the town manager Thursday at 2 o'clock here in the townhouse. And there's a number of other events around town and meeting with town officials and with students at the high school. So they'll be here.
How many, do we know how many?
I'm not sure what the delegation size is, but there's usually 15 or so high school students that come. I could be off.
And then there's a group of Concord residents who are going to be.
It's a group
going
of
to-
Concord. I'm representing the select board, and there's a number of citizens going that have been to Nanai a number of times. And then there are members of the town administration that are going as well. I think a couple, right? And so Alice and I went last time, 2015, we had a grand time, and I expect we'll have a grand time this time too.
Town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Updating you on the recruitment for the sustainability director. As you know, I think it was over 160 applications were received. Writing samples from the top 20 were solicited and reviewed, and 9 of those candidates will be interviewed on Friday. So we're down to 9 candidates, and then there'll be a second round of interviews following that to narrow it down to 4 to 5 individuals. Or this Friday, we hope to get down to 4 or 5, then we'll have a second round with that smaller group. So we're getting close. I would think in 3 weeks, we might be in a position to make a job offer to somebody. The Assistant Town Manager received a grant from the state to help promote civic engagement. We'll get a free year of software service from a company that provides citizen surveys online, like SurveyMonkey. So if we want to ask citizens their opinion on one thing or another, we can do that and see how that works as a way to get feedback on a specific issue or specific issues.
Since we're doing the long-range planning, that may be pretty appropriate.
Right, yep. 55 Church Street, the new building next to the Harvey Wheeler Center. On Friday, the Human Services staff will be moving from Everett Street, 105 Everett Street, where they've been for many years, to the new quarters that have been painted and fixed up and ready for them to start. So on Friday, they'll be moving in. The Recreation Department and the retirement system will be moving at a later time. Some renovations will take place for those 2 departments, but on Friday, we'll be using the new building at 55 Church Street. Zagster bike sharing service, it may come up, there was a picture in the Globe, I think, of Lexington using it, and it's a joint program that we will be joining with Lexington and offering the shared bike rental service so that visitors can come, rent a bike, go to Walden, leave it at Walden if they want, or West Concord, get on the train, or a bike to Lexington and leave the bikes there. So trying to make it convenient for people to come visit, ride around, and
That require more bike racks?
There'll be, a bike rack is required. The company provides those, so it would have one at the Visitor Center, one in West Concord, and I think one at Walden Pond, and those will be the Concord locations unless more are, there's demand for more, and then there's a couple of locations in Lexington as well.
So
So
is this the Hubway expansion, or is this another
it's
vendor?
called Zagster, so it's a different company, same concept, I think, only coming out to.
That information will be
Suburbs.
available at the Visitor Center as well.
Yes,
as it.
yep. So it won't happen, I think Lexington's got it underway now. It won't happen in Concord till the spring, once the
great, though.
the warmer weather returns. Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, the plants are being installed this week, and those were a gift of the Friends of Sleepy Hollow to sort of finalize that resurfacing, which came out very well. The Phase 1 plants, so that work is happening this week. Old Marlborough Road will be closed beyond Hunter's Ridge Road at the Sudbury border, so not a heavily trafficked area. But on Columbus Day, the holiday, we'll close the road because there's about 8 hazardous trees that are in danger of coming down. And the tree advisor has told us we should take those trees down. So it requires closing of the road and the use of a crane to remove those older trees. Middlesex School cell tower, an appeal was filed on the order of conditions issued by the Natural Resources Commission. So that matter is will be under discussion for some time. Ride Out Playground, the plantings have been installed. For those of you that haven't been out there recently, it looks very nice. And Kate thought that the paving would be taking place in the next 10 days or so, and all work is supposed to be completed by the end of October. So I think it's coming out very well. And there's a dedication ceremony planned for Thursday, October 26th at 5 o'clock. I was asked to mention that they're on subject of payment for unused vacation accrual. The town has a bylaw that prohibits that. Town employees are allowed to accrue 1 week beyond their maximum amount. So if employees get 3 weeks of vacation, they can have 4 weeks on the books maximum, and anything beyond that is lost. So there's no practice in the town side of accumulating large amounts of unpaid vacation.
That's both for the school as well.
The bylaw applies only, the town bylaw applies for non-contract employees, and virtually all school department employees are covered under different collective bargaining agreements. As you mentioned, we have visitors from Nanai, Japan coming, and town representatives going there around November 1st is the ceremony taking place in Nanai. And lastly, the Concord Independent Battery has been requested to fire a 21-gun salute in honor of the USS Constitution's first turnaround event since significant repairs were done on the ship. So if the board has no objection, I'll authorize the battery to relocate the guns to Fort Independence to participate in that October 20th event.
And I don't forget, is there a helicopter that's going to be landing at some point? Or is that
Oh,
already occurred?
That's right. I'm not sure what the date on that was. October, it's a weekend, it's this coming weekend. That was a request, part of a fundraising event for wounded warriors. It's this weekend at Emerson Field. There was a request to land a Black Hawk helicopter unarmed. So the kids can climb into the helicopter and have a look at it. And that, again, the proceeds from the fundraiser. The fundraiser event is happening at the Armory. Proceeds will benefit the wounded
Probably
warriors.
want to make sure people are aware of it so that there's no great surprises when they see it coming.
That's on Saturday morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions or, no?
Does it require an act of this board to approve the independent battery's request to take the cannon?
Not in between. The board approves their regular scheduled firing, then in between those regularly scheduled events, the town manager is authorized to approve that relocation, but I thought I'd take the opportunity to let you know.
So I don't care, but why do we have to approve the regular?
The guns are owned by the town, and that's in part of an agreement worked out with the independent battery that they'd go through a certain training protocol to be sure everybody that fires is knowledgeable in the use of the guns, and that if the guns leave town, permission would be requested, so we know where they are, essentially.
So once it leaves town, it's not our decision as to whether they can be fired, because they're not.
Well, the request is that to fire on a certain, to take the guns out of town to fire for a specific event and return them immediately thereafter. And that agreement's worked well for the past 25 or 30 years.
Any other questions? None at all. Thank you. I think now it's the time to open the public hearing that had been continued from last time regarding the gas main petition, National Grid, 734 to 858 Main Street.
I move to reopen the public hearing.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
They have requested to withdraw the application, so I don't think there's much for us to do.
close the public hearing.
And I'll second that.
This is,
I assume the public has, none of the public has any interest in commenting, so with that, all those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye. And I move to allow National Grid to withdraw the application without prejudice.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Now, the 7:10 public hearing, I think we are good time. Gas main petition, National Grid, 1 to 105 Lexington Road. You have a motion to open that?
Move to open the public hearing.
second,
All in favor?
Aye.
And that has been a request that that matter be continued until October 30th, the meeting that we're holding. I don't know if there's any comment anybody wants to make. Otherwise, we
Move to
Motion to close.
continue the public hearing to 10:30, October 30th, meeting at 7:05.
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now to number 6, discussing confirming board's 2015 vote to support Mothers Out Front resolution to eliminate leaks of natural gas from utility distribution systems. I believe you spoke with
Yes, I
Senator
called,
Eldridge.
as you know, we submitted a letter in support of this action with a bill filed in 2015. We wrote to the governor supporting that act. I called Representative Eldridge's office to find out the status. The bill has been refiled in the Senate, Senate Bill 1845, and in the House, House Bill 2683. And they encouraged us that if we were going to have anything to say about it, that we should get with the program here.
I know with our package, there was a document showing that I believe there's something, in 2016, there were 115 unrepaired leaks. So, and I understand that whatever gas is leaked, the town, the citizens of the town end up paying for the gas. So it clearly would be, it seems to me, in the public interest. Alice, I don't know if it's something you were involved in from.
I was. My only question was, were there any changes to the legislations, or were they simply refiled? I saw they were both in committee, referred to committee in January of this year. Is that, that's.
What's coming up right now is there are going to be hearings. So
Okay.
I don't, the hearing is scheduled for the 17th. I think that's a Senate hearing, but I'm not positive.
Okay.
So that's why they encouraged us, if we were going to write, to have it written. And they encouraged us, if we were supportive of this, that if someone could attend the public hearing, that too would be
October
helpful
17th?
to the legislation. So I hope we can do this. The gas company repairs leaks that it considers dangerous.
Yeah.
But other leaks that they don't consider dangerous are really the ones I think that are here. And as you said, it's leaking
They
gas.
don't have a
at
great
some-
incentive to,
So I'm hopeful that we can support Mothers Out Front and get a letter off to the governor and Senator Eldridge, and hopefully one of us might be able to attend the public
when
hearing.
we say we're confirming the vote, would that be, if we take a vote tonight and then we would incorporate a letter to that effect?
So I think we had done quite a bit of research the first time around into the legislation that had been proposed. I guess since we have members of Mothers Out Front here, if somebody could just help us understand, I didn't have the same time this time to look at what maybe changes in the legislation. And if there are any changes, we should just know about them so we know we're voting on something with clear knowledge. Yeah, please.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you.
I'm Carolyn Wilkins. I live at Hillside Avenue. So I clarified today, these are identical pieces these are identical resolutions that are being put before Concord Select Board. So in terms of the content you're voting on, it's identical. The issue is that this is an opportunity, by having numerous communities in Massachusetts again submit these resolutions, as you said, sir. It is putting the onus back on the utilities to be accountable for the gas they're losing, to essentially fix the leaks. Otherwise, we are all paying for the escaping gas, which is highly dangerous and damaging our ecology as well. So,
That was the clarification I wanted to hear, because I started reading through the bills and I didn't get all the way through and compare one against the other.
yes, great.
So we did discuss this at length and before the vote in 2015. The board voted to support the effort on both of these pieces of legislation. We sent copies of our letter to the governor and to the sponsors of the bills.
And to our representatives, I assume, as well. Anybody else in the public want to make a comment, or do you want to add something?
Well, I just wanted to add, Mike Barrett, our representative, he is one of the key leads on this initiative, so just to put that out there. And also the 17th, I'll keep the board apprised. My understanding, I'm very close to the Massachusetts group doing this. That date is a moving target, so I will definitely keep you apprised of that as best I can.
Will do, because I would hope one of us could go.
Yeah, it would be fantastic.
So,
We have a motion then to,
Sure.
Steve, before you make it though, when you make the motion, my suggestion would be that we include and to generate a letter of support of this legislation submitted to the governor with copies to our representatives and
And the sponsors of the
the
bill.
sponsors of the bill.
I would agree with that, too.
Would you go so far as to say authorize the chair to sign a letter?
That sounds,
Even better.
that's even better. Mhm. If he wants to write it, he can do that, too.
That's a pro tem job, if ever.
All right, I move to confirm the 2015 vote to support Mothers Out Front resolution to eliminate leaks of natural gas from utility distribution system and direct the chair to submit a letter of said support to to the sponsors of the bill, the governor of the Commonwealth, and our state legislators.
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that authorizes.
Unanimous pass.
It said direct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
We now are moving to 7, which is a continuation of the discussion of appointing Dog Park Feasibility Study Committee. We raised this at the last meeting, I think, to just notify people that it was going to be on today. There has been the two-page charge, which I believe, Mike, you assisted in putting together. And it calls for one of the changes from the previous charge was that the 7 citizens at large from various sections of Concord with diverse backgrounds, at least 2 of which shall be dog owners. There was some concern, I think, earlier when there was provision that said at least 5 would be dog owners. Is there any further discussion that the board would like to have, or any of the public like to comment on it?
The revised.
I just make the same comment I've made before. It's a feasibility study to determine whether it's a good idea to have a dog park and not a study about where a dog park should go. Although they may come up with some suggestions, but the primary question is it feasible to have one
Right.
in town?
And I guess the question that isn't clear to me, at least in this, is whether the appointing agency will be the select board or the town manager.
The intention was for it to be the select board.
For sure,
Select board?
yeah.
I think we already have a number of green cards submitted for this, because it hasn't been a surprise that this is coming, so we can get up and going, I think, probably pretty quickly.
I don't think we had 7 green cards yet, right? We are still looking for members.
I think we may
we
have
may have
as
7?
many as 7. Obviously, we'd like to get as many as we can,
Maybe
but,
some working in this week.
You have about 9 people.
No, great.
Could I suggest a modification then in the committee charge to just clarify the appointing authority? And under C, membership and term, the committee will be comprised of the following members, and then insert appointed by the select board.
Okay, appointed by the select board.
with that modification, do we have motion?
I move to approve the charge for the dog park feasibility study committee as amended.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I think we now move on to the parking plan implementation update. And I know that Marcy's not here because her mother suffered an injury requiring her attention, and so,
Yeah, I'll just mention that. It was our intention to have Marcia Rasmussen, the planning director, who's coordinated, helped select the consultant, Nelson Nygaard, that did the parking study. She participated in that, as well as the development of the 2012 Concord Parking Management Plan. And Marcia has been behind the implementation of the parking program as you see it today. And it was our desire to have her available to answer your questions and any questions the public may have. And at 8:30 last night, I received a message that she had the family emergency that required her to be in upstate New York this morning. So I apologize for that. So I guess to open up the conversation, I'll just recognize that we've received a lot of concerns and complaints about the parking plan as we've implemented it so far, particularly the pay by phone aspect of it, but other parts of it as well. So I think we've agreed with Jane that we'll have a public forum to discuss the specifics in great detail in about a month. We were looking at the first 2 Wednesdays of November.
I think Andrew and I spoke, I
15th.
believe that the rooms are not
The hearing-
available, so that the date that we've kind of penciled in would be November 15th, which would be a Wednesday and following our Monday meeting of November 13th. I think that we have a number, and we've got a booklet here of the various communications of the citizens, and we're clearly aware that there's a lot of concern and displeasure with what the current situation is. I don't know whether there has thought been given to sort of stay any enforcement of the meters.
Well, a suggestion has been made to bag or otherwise disable the meters near the library, which has received a lot of concern. So if the board is interested in that, we can suspend enforcement of the meters alongside the property of the public library. We could do that. We could, I'm open to whatever steps you'd like to take. We have begun to implement 60-minute parking in the 7 spaces, I think they are, closest to the library in the Stowe Street parking lot. So if you were to park in the front row closest to the library, those spaces would be limited to 1 hour only. So somebody making a brief visit to the library to browse for some books and come out in less than an hour would park there. But others have said we should be able to park free near the free library so there's interest in that. My concern there is if there's any restrictions on Main Street, the cars that want to park all day on Main Street will move to that area. So, but it's worth a try. We'll see.
You're talking about kind of a 5 or 6 week experiment, if you will. I guess my feeling is I would urge that we bag the meters.
In the area on
Area
Main
by
Street
the-
near the library.
But that doesn't address the parking that's on the opposite side of the street that's pay by phone only. They can't bag the non-meters.
Right.
So that enforcement would be suspended, or?
So if that's I discussed with Jane this morning, and she thought bagging the meters near the library so that people could park and access the library free of charge would be helpful. The pay by phone, if we suspend enforcement or bag the sign, so to speak, and so we discontinue that. I suspect those stalls were pretty much all full all summer long until the signs went up. That situation will probably return. But if that's the board's wishes, we can do that.
If you bag the meters in front of the library, will there still be a limit to how long you can park there?
In that area, I think we don't have any limit. I think on that section of Main Street, both the pay-by-phone and the meters, the pay-by-phone I know was no limit, so you could park for 8 hours, you had to pay for 8 hours. With the meters, I don't know, there may have been a 3-hour limit. I'm sorry, Mike, I have to check.
Consistent
So-
with.
So in that case, people couldn't park all day in front of the library.
So with the parking plan overall speaking, the West Concord side has had no issues or complaints? So the meters that keep commuters out of the residential areas has been effective?
There was a much more limited, expanded down Commonwealth Ave on a limited basis. Pay-by-phone was implemented in the commuter parking lot.
Has there
I
been
haven't heard.
complaints there?
The planning
I haven't
department or the
seen
finance
it.
department would hear those. I haven't heard of any.
I don't think the correspondence we got referenced.
No, I mean, I think our planning department has created this plan that we approved. We should let this plan continue and have our hearing. I mean, you're not giving it a chance. I think there's
I
a
think the
lot
public
going
has
on
kind of
there.
Responded in terms of.
Well,
Some have.
And I guess just to further, I have to, admit that the process followed here did not go as I would have liked it to have gone. I'll take responsibility for that. The board made the decisions to implement this in March. Some communication was made in April, I think, and then it wasn't implemented. There were delays implementing it until August, much of it, and it was sporadic. When the new meters went in, they didn't function well. They had to be changed out. Some of them, the pay-by-phone operation in the meters, not the no-metered area, but with the meters themselves, the pay-by-phone didn't work well. Still doesn't work as well as it should. So there's really been implementation problems. So the public, I was concerned to hear one person say, "You've changed the way it feels to park in Concord and to visit Concord," and that certainly wouldn't be our desire.
I
So
think that's a primary
concerns.
concern underlying much of the correspondence we've gotten. I think one thing I would suggest, Chris, is if we could put somehow, for our hearing, this has got to do with, but for the hearing, put together some kind of timeline or something indicating how this parking study played out, because some of the correspondence we've got seem to be uninformed about the fact that there was a process and there was public hearings about this and there was a lot of input. That doesn't mean, but I think it would be fair to point out, if we're gonna have a forum, what the town did to get to this decision. And there were people all along who didn't like it. I mean, there were people who were concerned about parking in the downtown, meters going out Monument Street, out Main Street. And so I think there were some concerns, but these concerns were part of a process that we went through. And I think as a preface to this hearing, we ought to at least acknowledge that, as Steve said, the planning department went through a lot. And it was a long, I don't exactly remember when it started, but, 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe even
The
more.
study came out in 2012.
Okay, so even
And
longer.
and back then, we had mostly 1 hour parking, and so there was concern that 1 hour wasn't enough time to,
enough, yeah.
to go shopping or have a meal. So there was a request to expand the hours that you could park. And so we brought a consultant in, a person made recommendations. We were very slow in implementing the 2012.
And then we had,
And there were some
2012,
curveballs.
before Concord Academy obtained the Arenas Farm area.
I think they had owned it before that. I think they may have owned that for about 10 years, I think.
It's always struck me that, if part of the issue had to do with Concord Academy's parking, where there's quite a lot of space at Arenas Farm, that there could be some sort of a shuttle that they use for the student transportation to sports and whatever back and forth, and avoid the problem.
The headmaster of Concord Academy sent me an email last week while I was away, which I read last night. So I will respond to him. He asked for a meeting to discuss his perspective. I don't really know whether he would be receptive to what you just suggested or other ideas. It was very obvious that all summer long that those spaces on Main Street were almost completely taken. A few by commuters, mostly by I think Concord Academy attendees or folks attending the camp or whatever. And then when the signs went up, the parking was no longer there. So I'll have a conversation with the headmaster and see what his thoughts are.
I think Mike's idea, I think we should be pretty explicit before we hold a public hearing about the activities that have taken place till now. And I'm probably one that was equally as surprised about how the decision was made to have pay-by parking only in front of Concord Academy. And that process, maybe we can be a little more transparent, since I missed that conversation myself. So I think that's,
And just to recap on that, the intention all along was to have the same meters that you see elsewhere in the center, with the option to pay with coins, with a credit card, or pay by phone. But the historic district didn't think the meters in the residential area was appropriate, so they would not allow either meters or a kiosk type of payment system. So that we really had only the pay by phone choice. And perhaps I should have brought that back to you for reconsideration. Instead, we implemented the one payment option that was left to us, and maybe we should have revisited it. So.
Yeah, but I think in the past, anytime we've talked about parking, this board has always talked about pay by phone.
as
We
an
bragged
option,
we
as
wanted
an
it.
option, but not the only
Only.
option, because we're hearing a lot of pushback
So we'll
about.
have those little slots you put money in too then. We'll
Oh.
just go back to that.
that was the Historic District Commission
I mean-
wouldn't allow it.
All right.
So
They said
we have
no.
if the pay by phone solution is not optimal for a lot of people, I don't think our only option is stick with
Pay
it
by
or
phone.
else. If we give
Gotcha.
up that parking, then we have to understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve. And if it's, you meeting with Concord Academy will probably be a first good step in that. And there might be another way for us to approach a solution. I'm open to that.
Sometimes the solution can be worse than the problem.
Well put.
We may have gotten
And
ourselves
is
into.
it my recollection that there are still meters to come?
Well, so the final phase of the plan, and again, it's a 2001 parking management plan, which is available online, but I had a little bit of difficulty finding it, had to use the search tool to locate it. It wasn't on the planning, it wasn't on the front page, it was on the planning page. I'm not sure where it was housed, but so it was a little difficult to find that. The recommendation is that the two major municipal parking lots at Keyes Road and Walden Street, that Keyes Road be half metered or, pay for parking, probably with kiosks, and the western side closest to the condominiums, the Keyes Road condominiums, that'd be free all-day parking, but the parking closest to the brook or to Footstalks would be paid parking, and that the Walden Street lot, I think, would be entirely paid parking. I don't think there would be any free spots there. So that's also the recommendation of the consultant, and that was scheduled to be implemented with the renovation of the parking lots next summer. So that would be worth making known to the public that we're contemplating, or that's been recommended, that there be additional meters or paid.
I've gotten lots of folks suggesting that we ought to revisit
Yeah, I'm getting that too.
that. And it's anecdotal, but I've tried to pay attention to not the Walden lot, but the lot
Keyes Road.
on Keyes Road. And that you can park there
All day
all
for
day.
free,
But
right?
that's not my observation. My observation, when I get there fairly early in the morning, people are not parking there all day. It seems to be I don't know why exactly, maybe it's too far to walk to the train station, but it doesn't seem to have the same experience as concern for all-day parking elsewhere in town.
Well, the part of that lot's intended to be all-day parking for employees,
But
yeah,
they tend to
yeah.
park on
on the far side.
the far side of the lot by the.
So I see what you're saying is that the section of that lot closest to the brook doesn't seem to stay full all day
Yeah,
long.
it's
You can
totally
come in and go out.
unscientific. I don't want,
Yeah,
but
yep.
just observation, it doesn't seem to be, you get there at 8 o'clock and the lot's full and it doesn't empty. It seems like you got churn. But I've gotten a lot of folks saying, really? Really?
So similarly, the comments that I'm getting, or the questions that we had talked about early on, maybe a year ago at this board, is that commuters are looking for not a full-time permit, that they
Yeah.
would like a pay-by-day option of putting in money in a meter or pay by phone or stuff $1 in the box. And their only other alternative was to go somewhere else in town, which was the Keyes Road parking lot. And so a lot of commuters who don't commute 5 days a week find it very expensive to pay the cost of having a semi-annual fee. Can't
We can
remember the
get paid,
cost.
if we can get paid by phone, we
Down.
ought to be able to get a similar situation in spots, even over at Crosby's.
The
where we're
Crosby's
renting
commuter lot.
that space.
That you should have more options for parking rather than the pass, which
But
is
if we're
full
looking at
price.
people who are choosing to park farther away from the train station because they want to avoid the cost of paying $200 or more every 6 months, is that what it is? $200 for 6 months? $400 a year, because they only work 3 days a week. If we provide them an option of day parking, it may alleviate the pressure that we're seeing on downtown areas. But it's I don't want to presume I have any solutions, but I just think maybe this is appropriate for a forum discussion in November.
So I'm hoping for the 15th then that we could get some timeline to show people what had happened and we can get teed up a way to have a conversation about it that night without it
yeah.
being just everybody telling us what they don't like or do like and we
So-
spend 3 hours hearing stuff and we don't make any progress.
One reason I'd like the 15th to be tentative is two folks that should be there is Marcia, of course, who's been responsible for implementing it, and the parking consultants, Nelson and Igard, who've done studies for Cambridge and Lexington and
Right.
many communities. And so to understand what the thinking is behind some of the approaches that we've taken, I think would be helpful. So hopefully they'll both be there on the 15th, but we'll try to find a,
Yeah, no, she's part of the delegation going to Nanai and I don't know when everybody's
First
coming
week in
back.
November.
they're in Japan on the first
Yeah,
week
but
in November.
many people are there.
Are
Oh,
having an
extended
extended,
visits.
so I'll
Right.
check with her to see. But we'll work towards Wednesday the
As
15th.
soon as practical is, I think, then.
Yep, and we'll include a discussion of the municipal parking lots
Yeah, I
that
think
haven't
we-
been implemented yet.
And I'm just curious, Marcia had prepared a fact sheet from the last transportation planning committee in town. Transportation management team, is that what it's called? I'm just curious, it said there are 85 of the meters that we received were deemed broken. Is that a high percentage? Were we expecting that many to be?
Yeah, faulty, they had to be returned. Yeah, there were,
That's a lot.
it was a lot. They're more complicated than the old mechanical ones that just did the coins. So, but it was a lot. They were rejected and sent back, and our money was they were replaced with machines that worked. But that was a lot of machines to have problems with, or meters to have problems with.
Okay, I think we have
So
a
is
lot
it,
of
is
legal
it,
here.
is it easier for you, like, is it a better thing to just allow discretion to the town manager to make the call?
Well, so I think it makes some sense to bag the meters on Main Street adjacent to the public library, to provide some relief there. That seems to be the biggest concern. I would suggest we continue the pay by phone process and not switch horses in the middle. Have the public hearing, hear what the public thinks, hear what the consultant and Marcia thinks, and then make a decision there. I think it'd be further confusing to suspend enforcement and reinstate it or not, or modify it. So
We
my
don't have
suggestion.
bags that say 1 hour parking.
Or 3 hours or something.
3 hours.
So we can put bags on there that tell adjacent to the library 3-hour parking.
Then the police can monitor the movement of cars. I think we have a lot of people interested in
And I just
talking
would
to us.
advise people that we do keep a record when they do send letters and emails. So
Oh, is
we
this
have-
the,
Yes, that
record?
was compiled and part
Excellent.
of your request.
Great.
And it's very helpful to us.
So I think we have people who want to tell us things that they haven't written to us. Perhaps we should.
Well, if there's somebody who would like to, I think I'd prefer to just limit it to the notion of the bagging around the library, the meters, and the notion of having a fairly prompt public hearing. I think the issues we know pretty clearly in terms of the frustration that people have and the dissatisfaction, and that's really what the public hearing will address rather than spending tonight to do it. But if anybody would like to address us regarding what we've been discussing, please come forward. Yep.
My name is Bill Montague. I've been a retailer in Concord for 41 years. And the question I have to put before you is that how do you answer the fact that the telephone, pay by phone, is discriminating against people that don't have phone? That's outright discrimination. What answer do you have to that? I'd like to hear.
That's what the hearing will address. I think
question.
that's beyond what we were talking about tonight. Tonight was trying to set up the notion of, we are in a situation right now, how do we move forward from it? And so we'll get the consultant information. I think a number of people agree with you that not people who even have cell phones don't always carry them around. And that makes, you can't park in an area that makes sense to park in. I mean, I think there are some problems, but that's, I don't think, really the focus of what we're trying to address right now.
But I think his comment goes into the record, and I think I
Yeah.
saw Andrew taking that down.
So am I limited to my comments to you, to the board?
Well,
Is
I mean,
that what you're telling me?
I prefer that we not get into a whole area where we don't have the consultant, we don't have Marcia to answer the question, and we're trying to set up a time in order to do that. So I think that would be probably the better time, the more fruitful time for you to raise your concerns, because you'll have people there who can address that.
Well, also, could I make another comment?
Please, yeah?
These new parking meters were installed without consulting any of the retailers in town. And don't you think that's a little unusual on your part? They're putting them in front of all the retailers in town. We're losing business. Stores are closing. And people say they're due to parking meters because I talk to parking meter people, customers every day. They talk to me every day where the rest of the people don't. I have a unique situation here where the customers come in and tell me their problems every day. The lady said, I'm not going to put my credit card in there. I don't know where the numbers are going to. And a lot of people put them in, they don't work. And there's a lot of concern about this, and I think, what
That's
you-
why we're having a hearing.
No, but it's good to hear his concerns, because it'll, I'm sure he's not only representing his own interests, and we should be prepared to know what we think about that.
Yeah.
It's a point well taken.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, come forward.
Hi, Shelley Metzenbaum. I'll be very brief. For this hearing and before the hearing, I hope that you'll lay out something that was not laid out today, which is what is the purpose of this and the expected benefit, and what is the problem you're trying to solve? So I heard two new problems. One was the 1 hour parking, the other was the commuter parking. I've heard before the Concord Academy. You know, is it a revenue issue? If so, I hope the hearing will bring us what the expected net revenue is and what the history was. Or is it a congestion problem, in which case, what are the options that were considered? And then I would ask that, in addition to doing this at the hearing, for the community members who can't make it to the hearing, aren't as teed in, we've got this Concord Journal where we all listen to all the various gossip, et cetera. There's no reason you couldn't put that kind of information in advance of the hearing in the newspaper so we can all read it.
I think also we'll try to get something, perhaps even at the library, a handout.
At the
of some kind.
library, and there's lots of ways to get to us now.
There were a lot of the issues that you raised were in fact addressed in the parking study, and Chris, like you, I had a hard time finding it when I went to look for it, so I wonder if we could get it a little bit more,
Maybe on the front page, this is what it looks like.
Definitely.
I did the query
place.
tool.
You know,
and-
whether you
and was
agree
able to
with it
find
or not, it addresses in
No,
that
right, but
what
right
we
now
were
I have
trying to do.
no sense whatsoever. And I guess the only other thing I'd ask is whether or not there's any research that the issue Bill is raising in terms of the effect of parking meters on small-town economic well-being. Has anybody ever done any research on this in the past? If not, do we want to do that with some of the academics around town? Not around town, but around the state.
Thank you.
If you type in Concord Parking Management Plan, it's the first link
Really?
on Google.
On Google, I was on the town website.
Yeah, but it's, no, it's
Good old
the
Google.
town website. It goes right to the town website.
And
It goes right to the parking
But
management
you have to
plan.
know
When
the
I was
name,
on-
you have to know the name of the study. I just thought I'd find it on the planning board of
Yeah, I
Public
thought
Works,
I-
or I
yeah.
was looking on a specific site, and it was
Whatever we
it was
can to
tricky to
make it
find.
easier,
But we,
Concord Parking Management
So
Plan.
that's for our viewers at home.
I-
You can Google parking management plan
And
and
there's
find it on the town's
maps
website.
and
would identify
plan
yourself and then
existing
say
conditions.
what you'd like.
Yeah, Bob Treitman, I live on Middle Street. In advance of the hearing, I think it'd be really helpful to know what happened to all the cars that used to park on Main Street. Where did they go? Are they now in a Concord Academy parking lot? Are they on other neighboring streets? So I would like to see that added to the list of items addressed at the hearing.
I think even more generally, I mean, the plan has been in effect now for a while. Maybe the planning department has some statistics of, how it's worked, and I don't
Well, I know, I mean, the street is empty, and as you pointed out, the street was full over the summer when Concord Academy wasn't in business.
All right.
The other issue that came up was that Middle Street, we asked for enforcement of 3-hour parking there in advance of this. This was back in June. And some of the employees in the Thoreau district were
Parking.
getting tickets.
Yeah.
And they were told, go park on Main Street. You can park there all day. A month later, they were told, no, you can't do that.
Who told them?
Well, the signs told them they can't. Well, they can do it with a pay-by-phone, but they can't. It's no longer free. So they've been sort of pushed around. But I would be interested to know where the 20 or 30 or 40 cars that were there on Main Street have gone now that CA is back in session. Thank you.
Question?
I didn't see you over there, I'm sorry.
No problem. Yes, I did not come to
Please
speak.
identify
Oh,
yourself.
Tanya, thank you. Tanya Galis, 62 Prescott Road. This is not the issue I mainly came for. However, and I personally, I do not mind the meters in front of the library since but that's just my personal point of view. But I do think that the discrimination issue that Mr. Montague mentioned, that's really a separate matter that the select board should keep in mind as a separate matter. It's not a feasibility matter. It is the fact that cash is the legal currency, and every parking option, in order to be open to any citizen anywhere, not just from Concord, should have that as an option if it's paid parking. That's the problem with the pay by phone. It's not a convenience matter. It's a procedure. It's like a legal matter of discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Don Kingman, 166 Main Street, represent Concord Academy. Couple of comments. Where did all the cars go? They are on a series of tennis courts that we no longer need since we acquired the arena property. Question came up, why aren't we shuttling folks from the arena property forward? Worked very hard with the neighbors down there when we permitted that facility, and we're conscious of us intruding into that area, so to speak, and didn't want to create anything worse down there. So we have shuttled people. If we put people down there, then on game days, there's not going to be the availability of space. So we have an unintended consequence that may spill over into that neighborhood. In regards to bagging the pay for parking signs, I think I would be in favor of that for a brief period, and I'll explain that in a second. But also, we don't have all the signage up that I think was part of the parking plan that said Sundays free parking, Saturdays free parking, only pay for parking 8 to 5 would go a long way. What we're finding is when we have visitors, particularly out-of-state visitors, it's confusing what to do, what not to do. And this is just one personal thing for us. We have family weekend coming up, and we're going to have an influx of people coming here, and I can imagine the confusion would happen. It's not how we want to put our best foot forward, and I don't believe it's probably how the town wants to be perceived by outside visitors. So if there's any flexibility, it would not be this weekend, but the next weekend, that Friday and Saturday is when we're going to have a lot of visitors here on campus. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
And is the using the tennis courts working?
So, yes, yes, it is working. So we started that program last year when we had a major construction project on campus. We worked with the planning department to make sure we had contractor parking. We used it last year, and that's why you saw the influx of cars on the campus or on the street. And this year, pleaded with Marcia, there were 2 times, in my opinion, that would be best to have this be implemented. One was the start of the school year, another one would be at semester break. So we got the word out, and you're seeing the product of that. The unintended consequence of that behavior, in my opinion, is increased speeds along Main Street. That aperture now is much wider than it was before when you had cars parked either side of the street, and as they're heading west, they're gunning for the light, and if it looks green, we can go a little bit faster there, and speed has always been a concern of ours along Main Street. We've had conversations over the years with Chris and others.
Crosswalk bump outs are probably a big help to that, to slow it down.
It helps, but, you know, as an example, within the last month, we've already had 1 student hitting that crosswalk. You know, it may be the setting sun that's, is tough, could be speed, no cars on the side, I don't know what it is, but it's a concern of ours.
I've noticed folks speeding up going out when they get near the Thoreau Street light, because the road kind of goes to the right a little bit with the left turn lane there, and people speeding to go through.
So we'd like to be good neighbors and work and help solve the problem that we have. I think it's a collective problem. And I know hopefully we'll be sitting down with Chris in the near future, try to present some ideas that it might be a win-win for both sides.
Thanks.
That's good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Mr. Kingman.
Do we need to take any particular action in terms of, I think we're just, you've got the sense of,
Yes.
I just want to, so I understood bagging the meters by the library. Is that the extent of what we're going
I
to
think it
do?
makes sense to be sure we get the signs up that indicate the pay by phone is, applies to 8 to 5 only, or whatever the hours are. It's free on Saturdays and Sundays, and it doesn't apply after hours.
Got the
That's
signs and we
reasonable.
can get them up fairly quickly. and-
Hopefully we can, or if not, then we'll have to bag the meters.
Do they have to be, the other signs that would go up, or they require approval by the HGC?
No.
Thanks, Chris.
The next is the prioritization of the requested town CPA projects.
Thank you.
Gonna-
So I think you have a memo from
Yes.
Marcia, which provides her list and describe, and some description of each project. And then in addition to that, you're aware that the Public Works Department applied for $600,000 to renovate the fields at Emerson Playground. And I don't know.
That
if you-
has come in.
So that was also filed in a timely manner. I think Elizabeth Hughes indicated that there was over $3 million of applications against the $1.2 million or so that's available for CPA funds. So it's way oversubscribed. So I think the committee would benefit from hearing what the board's priorities for funding.
Chris, have we heard yet back, I think this was asked at our last meeting, have we heard yet back what their current thinking is about changing the contribution
I haven't heard anything further.
From
from
the,
1.5% to 3%?
I think they've put that in abeyance at this point.
So that's not being discussed at this point, for this year.
Not right.
Well, I think the ones that Marcia's laid out are the ones we've talked about in this memorandum. We've talked about the Giroux. We've talked many times about Junction Village and regional housing, and, I mean, these are exactly the ones that we have talked about. It's going to be a tough year for them.
Regional housing is obviously not a terribly expensive item, and that I think has been done every year. The Junction Village is kind of a continuation. I think probably the land acquisition is one that I would give pretty high priority to.
The land acquisition?
What?
You said the land acquisition?
Yes.
I don't want to change the subject, but are we sometime going to have that as an agenda item, as how we might think about
Funding?
putting together the funding? for
Yes.
that? Because this
Yep.
is, that's a good contribution, but
Mhm.
that's a fairly expensive piece of property. I think we probably do us well to get a little bit
Some
ahead
of
of the
these are
curve
kind
on
of
it.
ongoing, if you will. The Bruce Friedman Rail Trail amount is,
It's kind of a regular,
yeah.
it's moving through the trails
White
going
Pond
through
is a
town.
continuation of what we've been doing there.
Yep.
So
That's in
really
response to bids that came in
Right.
in excess of what we had to.
had planned,
Department
yeah.
cost.
So anyway, could we really like to see if we could set aside some time fairly soon to have some kind of discussion about the financing
Of the Giroux land
of that
acquisition, which is 2.9 million, and so the CPA allocation of 500,000 is only a portion of that.
And so it's still a lot to get, and I think we've had some preliminary input from the finance director about it, but I think we should get a financing plan put together here.
I can get that for you soon.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to,
So these have been submitted. You don't need to do anything further.
Well,
If you wanted
I
to,
think we should. I think we should, I don't think we should lobby those folks, but I think a letter from the select board indicating our support for these projects and that we would appreciate any consideration. I think we've done that in the past, so I think we should.
I mean, as a first step, definitely, and then maybe as we focus in more, we can maybe get more specific
Yeah.
if needed.
Yeah, I would like to move to authorize the chair to submit a letter of support of these initiatives to come before the CPA.
Second.
Do we want to, I mean, put them in a particular order?
I don't, do you think
You don't-
that's useful? I don't think we need to. I think we're
Okay.
saying, here's the things we think are important.
And some
Without
others that are not.
Sort
are
of
new.
seeing that the one that isn't in here is the Emerson Playground. So that one's a little unclear to me, that it seems like a great deal of money for Emerson Playground. I gather it has to do with underground piping and water movement and that type of thing. So it's far more complicated, but I haven't seen anything on that, so I'm a little less
We discussed it
comfortable.
at one time, as I recall, but I don't think it was a very in-depth discussion, and we didn't see plans or anything like that, so
And plus, if we're really talking about a total amount of somewhere $1.3 million, I think it's $1.4 million. I don't know whether that's something that could be phased in, because 600,000 is a hefty proportion and would exclude some of the others.
And that was prepared by the Public Works Director, I believe, or the engineer, so I can ask him if it could be broken up into phases.
That
So
would
some work
probably
can be
Pretty
done.
useful to
And is
have.
any part of that, could any part of that be in the regular town's capital plan? Is that something that'd fall? I mean, I'm not
It isn't
pushing for
current,
it.
it isn't currently, it could, it's certainly eligible to be included, isn't currently.
I think we received last year a sizable donation from Middlesex School for the repaving of the track.
Resurfacing of the track, yes.
150,000.
Yep.
I want to make sure that this project doesn't compromise the new surface on the track.
Mhm.
That's in another area.
That'd be good. So there, I think there is a motion on the floor that
And
we
seconded.
authorize the chair to,
All those, or if we had a second?
yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. And I guess we are now moving on to item number 10, the draft letter to CCTV concerning ending of their contract on September 30th, 2018.
So by way of background, we signed an agreement in 2005 with CCTV to operate the PEG Access, Public Educational Governmental Television Access, using funds generated from Comcast. It charges about 5%. We get 4.9%, I think, of their revenue to help support those activities. During those 10 years, many communities have switched to operating their own internal PEG access operation. I thought Concord might want to consider that, so in 2015, I signed a 3-year agreement with CCTV, and it was quite clear with them that we wanted to take a look at perhaps doing operating something internally. So I didn't sign another 10-year agreement; it was 3. And more communities do seem to be doing that, including Littleton, Somerville, Cambridge, operate their own television operations for public educational governmental operations using revenue generated by the cable companies. So I thought it might be helpful. We tried to work this past year on a early termination of the contract and working with the existing staff, and that didn't really work out very well. And in fact, they voted against it, the CCTV board. So it's not required under the contract. We simply need just not renew the 3-year agreement, which will expire in September 30th of 2018. But I think given the relationship that we've had, I think it'd be a courtesy to notify them a year in advance that it's our intention to let the contract lapse and to take the operation internally. But we thought when we discussed this earlier this year, this would be a good time so I think I'm looking for the board's support in that approach, if that's what you'd like to do. Again, I think in Littleton, for example, and other communities that I know are doing this, you get more response. It's more responsive. There's more programming going on. I've been disappointed with the amount of programming for the $400. We pay $400,000 a year. In the past, we've received between 350,000 and 400,000. It's up to now, it's going over 400,000. And we've just handed it over to CCTV. And they've agreed to cover this board's meetings. They've expanded their coverage to the school committee and even more recently to the finance committee. But I was hoping to see some more in-depth coverage of police department operations or fire department operations, or how the long-range plan is coming together, different things like that. In other communities, you see, a lot more than just meeting coverage. Meeting coverage is important, that would continue, but I think that for $400,000, we should get more than just meeting coverage.
The notification, in essence, allows, hopefully, for an easier transition, and also there has to be somewhat of a uncoupling with Carlisle in
Right.
terms of dealing with them. So I think this makes a lot of sense to do. I know there's been some concern about sort of, if you will, the government controlling the press. And I personally haven't seen, and I don't foresee that being a problem, but I know that it is important to have checks and balances. And I guess the question is, making sure that that issue will be dealt with. And it's not going to be kind of that this becomes the select board or the town manager's operation.
Right. Right. I agree with that. I think it's relatively simple. CCTV, the executive director, Tamara Green, indicated there's been very little. The P is the public access, so somebody produces their own show and wants to put their cooking show on, or their political forum show, or whatever it is they want to put on. They want to have a right to do that. Very little of that happens, and so there hasn't been any controversy because there hasn't been much of it going on. I think it's in Somerville where they contract that part out to a third party and just let a third party make the decisions on what time those shows are put on the air and what goes on and what doesn't, and enforces. There's obscenity laws, so you don't get to put everything on there, but to not have the government doing that makes some sense. But we have such little of that activity, it doesn't seem like it's necessary to really tie both of our hands behind our back in terms of other opportunities. We're trying to push information out to the public, I think, in a variety of ways. That's what we're really interested in doing, is having as many mediums as possible to get information out there. And I just don't think the television medium has worked that well for us to get our message out. And having the new public information officer working closely with the television coordinator to have some shows on if we want to cover the forum, make sure things, we've had audio difficulties, as you know, entire meetings, the audio doesn't work, or one person's mic doesn't work, and just crazy stuff that I'm not powerless to. I haven't had any luck fixing those types of problems.
A couple of things. The money from Comcast does not go any longer to CCTV directly.
That's correct.
It comes to the
It's in the town treasury. Yeah.
and we pay bills essentially. But when you might recall that we were discussing the possibility of ending this contract earlier, and in those conversations we did meet with Carlisle, and Carlisle would I think, I won't speak for them, but my recollection of that meeting was they would be more than happy to explore sort of working with us on a time and materials, I don't know what the right word is, but something like that, with CCTV. They would just use it, get billed for it. I do think Somerville has a pretty nice
Yes, they have very.
program. And we might explore with them, since the issue that Tom raised is going to come up. We might raise with them a little bit more in detail, how did they do it, did it work? And maybe check in with some of the other towns that have explored, or that have taken over their CCTV function, to find out, have there been any problems? If so, how have they dealt with them? Or they have, so we've got a little bit of information when this issue comes up, so we can address it with some facts. That'd be maybe.
That's a good idea.
How do you envision the structure of it? So you would have staff running the CCTV. Would there be a town committee or?
We could have a town committee. That would probably make some sense to provide some citizen guidance. Structurally, the person was going to report would have a executive director or communications director or what have you that would report to the assistant town manager.
Yeah, you can imagine the
so-
exact staff that's there now.
Right,
and-
right,
and
right,
just
yeah.
they
So
would
then,
report to,
Employees.
yeah, town employees.
And I would suggest that we get it up and running and see how it works, and then see what kind of citizen input is required. But I would have no problem with having a citizen advisory committee suggesting what kind of shows is the public interested in, what should we be covering.
Well, and that committee might also be the one that is the sort of watchdog to make sure that the citizens
That
are
the
in fact
access is
are,
happening, yeah.
that
yeah.
the public part of PEG access is being
Right.
faithfully adhered to, so that'd probably be a good idea. Plus, it's consistent with the way the town does stuff, so.
Mhm.
Any other board comments?
No.
Public have any comments regarding this?
Tanya Galis again. As you know, I wrote a letter about this. I just want to point out that, again, the principle, the fact that currently CCTV perhaps is not being used for citizens with dissenting
Keep
views.
your voice up, just so
Sure.
everybody
Sorry.
can hear.
Yeah. If I think it's the kind of microphone, but the fact that currently not too many citizens are using CCTV to view their opinions does not mean that they might not want to do so in the future. So that in itself is not a reason to advocate for government takeover, as to put it very bluntly and broadly. And also, just listening, we used to live in Somerville, and Somerville politics, which I didn't get as involved in as I am involved in process here, it's different. There are representatives, there are people are not also legislators per se as we are here, so there are people who specialize in speaking up for citizen concerns and are paid for it. It's not a community where one is under as much pressure to be civil in all our board discussions. It's so it's a different community. So I think I have been disappointed here in Concord sometimes about how when there is a town management division, different town divisions, approved projects going on, and some citizens object, how the party that's put on defense only stays on defense. We don't have the same amount of voice that influences the committees through town management parties. So even though it's not supposed to be that way, that's just my sad observation. Therefore, I really encourage a lot of caution about media channels staying independent and not being under government control. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't really need to vote to authorize this, it just is informing.
I'm letting you know.
Letting us know,
Yep.
so.
And I probably will tweak the draft letter that you saw. I will probably update it because it's a little bit dated, but something similar to that will go out shortly. Great, thank you.
Now, item 11 on the agenda is finalized board comments for Envision Concord. I know Jane sent, I believe, a memo out, and
That one.
if,
This afternoon sometime.
Did she send it? I didn't get a chance to read it yet. I just.
I was impressed by the detail that Envision Concord has, and that was able to be easily,
Great job.
I don't know, did anybody have any sort of response or comments that they?
I dove into that report that was in our handout and ready to be as critical as possible, I guess, just because we were asked to have comments. And I got to tell you, they really addressed a balanced approach to issues to address into the future, from housing to energy to sustainable, at all levels of different types of sustainability, social, economic, environmental. I think they're on the right track. I mean, maybe that's what we can, if you guys agree. It's just kind of our comments are a reinforcement that we like where they're going.
So the first question is, are we submitting a letter? We talked briefly about that at our last meeting. And we thought maybe it would be appropriate for this board, but we would have a discussion about whether we are accepting a report that's presented to us, or if this board wants to make a comment. Jane's comments seem to, I'm sorry, I'm just reading them now. Seems to imply that we have an interest, or she would go along with an interest of this board crafting a letter of our interest to the comprehensive long-range plan. Is that what we are agreeing to do now? So what I don't see in this, that I think we talked just briefly, is about what the select board can opine about how to maintain a healthy and resilient economy in our downtown districts. You know, how we can work with businesses and realtors and others to help us not have empty storefronts, as Mr. Montague points out. And I think there's a role for the select board possibly to play in that. I don't know exactly what that is, but I think there's worthy of discussion. So I know that other boards are writing letters that address each of these, however many, 8, 10 areas. Do we want to do the same? I'd be happy to take a stab at a piece of this if you'd like. But I'd like to do it from the purview of the select board, not as individuals' interests, because we are, as individuals, encouraged also to complete the survey online.
Absolutely, but I think the board, we want to hear what the people are, their interests. I don't think, in some ways, I don't like jumping into the fine work that they're doing and try to steer it. I want to see what the citizenry is trying to tell us as critical items, and that gives us our mission, our marching orders. I mean, if we start to dictate what should be in the report, I mean, you're
I
not.
would call it dictating.
I'm just
I guess
saying,
the
like, if
question
we
is
start to
suggesting.
comment and say, you know, we don't like that direction, or you forgot to include this, or
Well, that's what we're being asked to do, is comment is there something within our purview that we haven't seen addressed? They did a very comprehensive
right.
analysis
So
in
if
their
you're
SWOT.
missing something, I think you can ask.
One thing I found that I didn't think was addressed was kind of the issue of citizen participation, providing information in a
Communication.
early and appropriate time,
That's good.
using technology in a better method for us, and getting younger people involved in kind of civic activity. That whole area, and I don't know, I didn't know enough, I wasn't involved in kind of the creation of this, whether they were limited in what they were supposed to sort of view. But that, to me, is an area that I'd like to see attention given to.
For me, I sort of agree with Steve in the sense that I think my reaction to what we got was, that's pretty comprehensive. But there's some things I think that need more emphasis than you have done. And there are 3 of them. One is the viability of the town as a small town economic engine, whatever the right words are. And that's sharply juxtaposed against the thing we continuously hear every time we survey the citizens' town character. And if we just go back to the parking thing that we talked about earlier today, a lot of the a lot of the communications that we got from folks in town was, this is just out of character with Concord. This isn't us. So I think the viability of a small but vibrant retail environment, the character of the town, and then I think is the last one you talked about, because it comes from the Town Governance Study Committee, is that, and I guess I would put, I don't know what the right words are, but communication or engagement or something that says, how do we make sure that we try to make that everybody's as informed as they can be, so we don't get folks saying, what study? I never heard of that before. I mean, that's gonna happen, I suppose you can't avoid it, but I think we could do a lot more with technology, and a lot more with the existing things that we have to more effectively communicate with folks in town. So I think those three things, I think I would suggest emphasis on, because I didn't see enough of it, but I would be gingerly about it, because I think they've got a job to do. Our job is to hear the report. We don't know what this comprehensive set of things they've done is gonna turn into when it comes to recommendations. So I don't wanna go, great job, and then have these, not that they would, but have these things, take a sharp turn to one way or the other, and so.
Maybe we ask them to put a governance section in?
So they're
Or some-
following a format that is being proposed by the American Planning Association as a new way of looking at how to develop comprehensive long-range
Very
planning.
detailed.
So it's a very detailed but structured way of organizing how the towns, well, all towns using the APA model, are thinking about their long-range planning. We used to do it in stovepipes. The planning department, the natural resources department, the public works department, the town manager, and each of those departments had their key objectives for a 10-year period. So this is trying to go across and integrate and understand the interconnectedness of decisions in any one of those departments. So they've broadened the categories under which those different departments operate. So I think adding one on governance, we basically can say that governance fits into all of these. How we make decisions and how we provide opportunities for citizens to communicate with us.
Yeah, and I think in Concord it's especially true, because all the town committees that we have and hundreds of folks involved in stuff, and, maybe you don't see that, I don't know, but I don't feel it that way in other kinds of places.
The other aspect that I found, I didn't think was emphasized to the degree that they mentioned it a couple of times, but tourism as a part of, I thought last week when Superintendent Dunn, the national parks came, over 1 million visitors and whatever, and all, everything they're doing and the preparation for, was it 2022 or 2025, all the work that's being done on that is something that clearly the town needs to be coordinating and making every effort we can to really benefit from that. They mentioned it, but I didn't think it got the emphasis that I would have.
Yeah, well, to me, that's part of town character. I mean, you've got this small, wonderful retail district here, the depot, and then over in West Concord. Very unique, it's small but really cool.
But I think
And
it's
you've got-
even
but also
broader than
you've
the
got-
physical. I think, our police are such that and we are a welcoming community. And not every community is. And I think that that's something that the town should be very proud of and emphasize. And I think it
Part of town
reinforces, the
character.
more we can reinforce that.
It's a part of it. You've got not only the national park, but you've got just the whole transcendental
Yeah.
stuff going on, and then you've also got our commitment to agriculture and open space. All of those things glom together to give us the Concord we all love, right? So that's what we want to sustain.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's how do we do it? We do it through these things, that kind of stuff. But and that keeps coming up in every survey. I mean, it's town character, right? It's really on the hit parade, so I think, but I don't know if we could take a crack at writing. Are you volunteering?
I'll volunteer to work with somebody.
I'll volunteer Jane to help.
Yeah, good idea.
I hope you're hearing that, Jane.
Just exactly who I was thinking about, too. Yeah.
I'd be happy to take a
I
crack.
think Jane would want to. I mean, I think she's
As our-
vested in this. But as long as it's, here's some stuff we would want to emphasize as opposed to, this is where you ought to go. And
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's what all of the boards are doing. They're looking at it through their particular lens of
But
the way we
but
can
it's
think the long
then
term.
focused on, Hugh Cargill Trust is focused on the Hugh Cargill Trust issues. And I think we have to take the broader picture, and that's why those very big issues, I think, are things we have to kind of wrestle with.
Other comments?
No, I think
So I
that was
think we
right
have
there, that
about a
fine
week
line. I think it's,
To do this, is that right?
The public have any comments, please?
Not a meeting on the 16th, so.
On the 16th?
I'll give a shot at warming up this microphone. Everybody else sat over
On the
there.
lights on.
Please
Absolutely.
identify yourself
Oh,
to begin.
Lori Gilpasaris, 1376 Old Marlborough Road. First of all, I'll just make a quick comment on the CCTV. As someone who has worked closely with them over the years and produced many, or filmed many events and had them shown on CCTV, I wanted to just mention that I think that there's a big change coming, and it has to do with YouTube. The last time we filmed an event, instead of giving it to CCTV for processing, we simply put it on YouTube. It was quick, and, the links are available to anyone to watch at any time they want to watch, and I think that's something to keep in mind as, we talk about that.
We've been talking to him about it.
That would simplify a lot of things because you could just have the links online and people could look at that. That aside, my true interest tonight is in the Comprehensive Long Range Planning Committee. As someone who has attended the kickoff meeting a year ago, my husband and I both did that, and we have been following the meetings, most of the meetings, through last year in the summer. And I would like to say that the APA sustaining places practices that they have adopted are absolutely fantastic. I want to note that those principles come with a very powerful statement that I don't think the community is aware of, and that is that we need to have sustainability built into all of these areas. It's critical. We're reaching critical times in terms of climate change, and many things are going to be much more difficult to manage. So by taking the time now to incorporate sustainability into all of these areas, we are in fact doing ourselves a favor. Also, the principles, the prelude to the principles, which I believe was in the letter that was sent out by the committee, basically say that we have to allow people, residents, enough time for reflection and comment, and that this is an opportunity for, and I'm not sure whose responsibility this is, for people to receive training on sustainability. And given the fact that Concord adopted sustainable principles in 2011, I feel that it's a good part of the fabric of our town now. Sometimes we forget it, and we like to take shortcuts that may not necessarily be sustainable, or we may opt to do something because it's too expensive to do it sustainably, and that I think is a mistake, and that we perhaps have to slow down and really think about what we're doing right now. Many of the towns that had the enormous flooding, of course, they're not Concord, thankfully, but there's foreshadowing that for towns that don't take steps now, we could be in real trouble, given the fact that we have 3 rivers coming through our town. So it's something we have to be careful of. I have a quick question about the hiring of the consultant. I think the team did a marvelous job with the SWOT that was all done prior to the consultant coming on board. And I'm trying to understand the process that was used to hire that consultant and who, in fact, the consultant reports to, if anyone. Is there an answer to that, basically?
There was a team that made the selection, the Civic Moxie. There were several, and I wasn't intimately involved in that process. The planning board is responsible to have a comprehensive long-range plan.
Okay.
It's a state requirement that all towns
Yes.
have a long-range
Yes.
plan. So this is being prepared for the planning board. So Marcia, Elizabeth Hughes, I think members of the planning board sat in and interviewed the consultants. There was good competition. And the group agreed that Civic Moxie was the most.
I think my understanding was that it was three town staff members, which would probably were from the planning board, and three committee members. But I didn't know if this was a board that was reporting to the town manager, so basically it's reporting to the planning committee.
They're preparing the comprehensive, they don't report, they report to the planning director, Marcia.
Okay.
That's who the
All right.
consultant works for.
Okay.
But they're preparing a report for the planning board
Okay, thank you.
and the community.
Thank you for that clarification. Okay, going on to the next point. Just this past weekend, I started asking people, there were a lot of town events and things going on in the community, and I had an opportunity to ask a number of people if they had taken the survey. I would say, at best, maybe 1 in 4 person was even aware that the comprehensive long-range plan is in progress, and that to me is a real issue. Maybe 1 in 5. So it's not a large number of people, and getting out information is difficult. And I know the committee has spoken about this, and they've basically relied on the paper, and I'm not going to say anything more about that, but they have published articles, but it seems that there needs to be some major communication that went out to all households advising that this process was in progress, and that what will be generated will be a legal document that will guide the decisions and planning of the town. And that is critical to take note of. So having said that, it was quite scary to hear how many people weren't even aware the plan was an ongoing process at this point, never mind understanding or having taken the survey. And I know the committee has been somewhat disappointed in the responses they're getting, but it indicates that communication has not been as good as it could have been. For whatever reason. Summer plays a big role in that as well, because half the town is away for the summer. So we're picking up, people are finally getting back from their summer vacations, they're tuning into things one at a time, and maybe they're finally getting tuned into this. And now on October 21st, we have a town session with the consultant and the planning committee, and their goal is to present results of a survey that most of the town hasn't taken yet, and to even go as far as to have voting on certain issues. We're going to be out of the country at that time, so we will not be able to attend, and that concerns me. But I'm wondering if this could be pushed back and some kind of really solid communication go out to the whole community so that everybody has a chance to engage. So that's one kind of request or proposition or whatever.
Does somebody have the site for the website to do the?
Envisionconcord.org, and when you go there,
Okay.
the front page is the survey.
Yes, and then I have a second comment to make about the survey itself. And in part, it has to do with questions about the consultant, how the consultant was chosen. This is a consultant who has worked with Boston and Washington, D.C. I doubt that they have any experience with small towns like ours. I don't know what kind of overview they were given of the town, how the town operates, how the citizens interact. And I note from the survey questions that they really don't incorporate the the spirit of the five APA principles that the committee is supposed to be using. And in fact, in some cases, I can't remember, I should have looked at it beforehand, but there's a specific question that I think allows you to rate sustainability as very important, sort of important, not important at all. And that's really not the spirit of these wonderful principles that we've adopted. So I'm concerned about that. That the survey seems to me to be flawed in many ways. There's not a response box for people to put in other. So they're led by the question in a certain direction. For instance, where would you like to see future development? Well, that's assuming the town of Concord and the residents as a whole want more development. We certainly have models of towns, Lincoln and Weston and others, that have decided that they will be residential communities. And how do they achieve that? And what can we do to maintain that characteristic for Concord? I think these are important questions that need to be asked. So I'm recommending, or I'm asking, is there any possibility of pushing this open meeting to give more people time to take the survey and to respond, and possibly to even, I don't know what to say at this point, to change certain survey questions, even if it's only to add a box at the bottom, giving people a choice for other, and to explain why they are choosing other, and other comments on the survey, because I think that would be a very useful tool for the community to work with. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Provided those same comments to the Comprehensive Long Range Planning Committee?
I have sent them.
You have sent them?
Except, I thought more about the postponement of this open meeting on the 21st, and so I don't know who, has the responsibility for delaying that, if it would be the select board that would make that recommendation, or,
I think it's the committee.
It
So
would
that's
be the
why,
committee. okay, so I will just forward it. Thank you for listening.
Thoughtful comments, thank you.
Thank you. Because you can have a conversation with Marcia about the comments.
Any other comments? Evening.
Evening. Mark Galis, 62 Prescott Road. Yeah, I have a few more comments. I've been to a number of the long-range planning committee meetings. I've spoken here a little bit about it. I have a concern about the clarity about the role of the consultant. I think it'd be helpful in clarifying, what actually is the situation, to have the request for proposal put on the town website. It's a public record. And partly there is, I think, a source of confusion in that it's the, as Mr. Whalen has mentioned, it's the planning board's responsibility, planning board's responsibility to prepare, up-to-date plans. But the word planning could mean making a plan or the plan itself. The consultant seems to be very capable at putting together documents, but a lot of those kind of things can be kind of generic and not really custom to the town, not really taking advantage of all the input from citizens, all the great members on the committee and different interests, and really creating something unique. There's also a component that has to do with outreach and public input, but public input could be like the co-urbanized kind of experience, it looks like, has been more in the area of Cambridge or someplace is going to be working on some large development together with some large developer, and they want to make sure that there's they address concerns going forward. That's very different than saying we kind of start with general principles, values, things that kind of are a kind of town character and value issue that allows you to not make specific detailed plans, but come up with the principles that allow you to be flexible as things change. I'm disappointed in the format of the survey. I think some of the questions are fine, especially if they're kind of open-ended or have an extra, fill in the box. I made some comments at the last CLPC meeting about this, and I'm in the middle of writing a critique of the survey that maybe will be useful in terms of interpreting the results, which kind of can, which conclusions can be kind of supported or not, and also may be helpful in further outreach. But there are certain principles of survey writing, and if it is important to get that input, you have to be very careful about survey. It should have been tested. It should have been brought to the whole committee, I think. So there's a little bit of rush. I think that Lori mentioned, a little bit about this kind of thing, about let's hurry up and get to the end product. I know we want to do that, but there needs to be a good balance if we really want to make it worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some of the information that Lori was asking about, and
You first identify yourself. I know you've done it already twice.
I'll be
tonight,
glad
but-
to do it again. That's the easy part. Tanya Galis. Actually, even that is not easy because I'm also Tanya Bartevyan as a pianist.
Thank you.
62 Prescott Road, yeah. Okay. I have written many letters, many letters to different committees, and most recently forwarded to you today something that I wrote to the planning board on September 26th, I believe, and I think before that, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Reng also forwarded that to you. There is one thing that is not discussed enough today is the consultant's role, in that the consultant has taken over much of the direction of the process. Just for your information, I was present, so was my husband, so was Lori, actually, on September 22nd at the committee's meeting, and the consultant was recommending in a presentation that will be expanded and repeated on October 21st. They were recommending to reduce green initiatives to make it easier for businesses. They were recommending coming up with policies that would require the use of newly acquired land, some portion of it for development in exchange for some portion of it for conservation. There was something, about the town character story. I myself had recommended that we don't stick with the term town character because it is vague, and because a lot of times I think development interests like to push this young versus old issue and make town character an old person's issue, and then claim that, we are not providing a good environment for the young. And in any case, it is a vague term, and it means something different to everybody. So the consultant picked up on that idea and then wanted to redefine town character. Said, we can redefine town character. And I kind of see a contradiction in debunking a term and then redefining it. So there are a lot of problems, and the survey is based to reflect that bias. And I'm saying another reason there is a bias there is that the consultant has had.
Can I ask you what bias you're talking about?
Yes, bias towards business and development, bias against conservation. In fact, pretty much they said on June 9th, after holding a public meeting on May 31st, which I couldn't attend that they came on June 9th, and right here in this room, in fact, they met that day. The consultant said, we gathered many views, but most of the people were over 65, and there were different views, affordable housing, conservation, and such, and of course we'll put conservation in the back burner because we have done so much about it already, and that immediately, puts those interests in second plan. But there are many people in town who defend conservation for very good reasons, not having nothing to do with town character, but the real values of natural preservation and its worth for young and old, rich and poor, everybody. This is not an old person's issue. But anyway, so there was a lot of this divide and conquer, and my concern has been that process related, because I think once the process is straight, then there is no problem at all with gathering all kinds of perspectives from all kinds of citizens with all kinds of public or private interests. But the process is not correct. Civic Moxie has been having closed focus group meetings with different interests. They have resisted and refused to hold one with conservation interests. They have had at least two with business interests, including the Concord Business Partnership. Moreover, Concord Business Partnership has declared on I think September 8th, that they are going to invite one of the consultants to their private dinner, and I think that's a real conflict of interest. Moreover, and I'm talking to you about these because I shared some of those concerns with or at least I mentioned to our town moderator during the effective governance meeting that I had some concerns, and she said that I should talk to the select board because you are the ones appointing the long-range plan committee. My husband and I attended an open meeting law training session by the Attorney General's office on September 18th in Rutland. And that's where it was clarified what I always thought reading the public body definition, that a subgroup of people, subgroup of any committee is a subcommittee and therefore subject to open meeting laws. So the way Civic Moxie was selected was with 3 town staff members. It's all in the minutes for anyone who wants to see it in the 2016 minutes. It's nothing secret about this. It was selected by 3 town staff members and 3 members from the Long Range Plan Committee nominated by their peers. So in effect, a committee like that, when a committee is advising a town manager whom to hire, they don't have to be subject to the open meeting laws. That's the Connelly exception we found out. But if there are people nominated from this committee to be on that group, then that is a subcommittee of that larger committee. So there was an irregularity. Okay. But it's too late to do anything about that now, and that's fine. Similarly, there is a similar violation with the survey preparation. So the survey, from what I remember, was scheduled to come out on September 21st. I may be mistaken. It just means hearing the recording. On September 18th, after finding out about confirming with the Assistant Attorney General about this procedural matters, I wrote privately to the co-chairs of the Long Range Plan Committee. I said that the survey is going to be prepared by 2 people with the consultant without open meeting laws. I'm very concerned. I'm concerned about what's going to be in it. Please, I do not want to file an open meeting law complaint. It's too much hassle for me, too much hassle for everyone else. Please review it before releasing it on your September 22nd meeting. And the response I got was that they would schedule a review of it for September 22nd, but the survey was already out. This was September 19th. So in a sense, my request for a review was granted, but the survey was already out. And as others have said, there are problems with the survey. So
what would you like sort of as a resolution? I mean, that the survey be taken sort of with a grain of salt? And I'm not clear where we're heading. I want to give you every opportunity to express yourself.
Thank you.
It's important to come to, sort of what the point that you're trying to get.
I think if this, it's really practically too late to do about the survey. I don't see how the survey would be canceled. I don't see that.
I've heard a couple of arguments that the survey will only include a limited number of people, and that, you know, there may be kind of already an inherent bias, which just says to me that the survey may have some benefit, but it cannot be relied upon for, you
25%
know,
response
great
rate. to the survey is
insight.
pretty
Well,
good.
we
So-
need to know what those percentages are
Yeah.
for a good hit rate. So let's not think
I
that
won't
it's
prejudge,
good
but
or
I'm
bad,
saying,
but
I mean, I never,
Yeah.
you know, it's
I'm
like
still,
polling.
I'm still not sure
polling.
what
I don't.
it is you're asking.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, I'm asking that you hear me. I wrote that letter, for example. I mean, this is one kind of what I was referring to when I talked about CCTV. I'm mostly asking to be heard, and as I said on the governance meeting, I thank the
But I
select
think we
board.
have, I guess that's what my point
All right,
is.
yes, fine, okay. So just since you asked about the survey, there is one particular question on the survey that feeds into the consultant's recommendations based on these closed-door meetings. So, okay, well, for example, the consultant can be insisted to hold a focus group meeting with conservation interests. Consultant group could be required to hold their focus meetings open to the public for attendance, not necessarily open meeting law meetings. They are not obligated to comply with the open meeting law, but they can have the public present. It's actually in the interest of us all to know what everyone else is thinking. I mean, there is nothing, you know, this is from what I have gathered, the reason is to provide secrecy and privacy for business interests. And frankly, I don't see why they should have priority over other citizens like myself who are taking all sorts of risks here, you know, criticizing everybody right and left. I don't want to do that, you know. So the consultant, please, should hold open meetings that are open to public attendance and hold one with conservation interests. And that public hearing on October 21st, it should not be run so much by the consultant. It should be more in the control of the committee. There should be more time, like Lori said, for public comment and for perhaps response from the committee. It should be more a public hearing than yet another party run by the consultant. Okay, thank you very much. I think,
Thank
I
you.
guess these are, if you have any other questions, I can.
No, I think your comments are good. What I do want to add is, for those who have looked at the survey, you may find that there are questions that you disagree with, but almost all of the questions have a public comment, a comment section. So I have it up, I'm looking at it. Do you have ideas for accommodating affordable housing? You could say, I don't want affordable housing, as valid a comment as any other. So there are it's not without places for public comment. And the Civic Moxie website, I have not gone to as many meetings as you have on the comprehensive long-range plan, but I think that what's embedded in this process, the Envision Concord website, is meant as a platform for dialogue. All the comments are public. Anyone can enter comments. You can enter your entire letter that we got a copy of as well into the public discourse and have it be a topic of conversation. And I think that maybe the concerns about the survey itself, there may be inherent bias in the questions. I'm not a judge of that, but there's ample places for someone to make comment about none of these apply to my way of thinking. I can't answer this question.
Actually, there is one critical question where there is not that option, one that I wanted to leave blank, and that's question 22.
23?
22.
22.
That is a critical question because it aligns with the recommendations of the consultant. It equates conservation interests with town character without mentioning any of the other benefits of conservation. And in the option 2, it groups preservation and protection with both affordable housing needs and tax-based. So if somebody like myself who might be willing to make room, who would be, I mean, I support affordable housing. So if there was some need to reduce conservation measures to accommodate affordable housing, that would be one thing. But I certainly would not want to have my conservation interest written off as town character, nor would I want to forego existing protections, nor would I want to be saying that it's the same thing whether.
I see your point.
Yeah, so that.
I don't remember what that question, what's the question?
Because,
I
they
forget what it
force you to. They won't process
Write it in on question 21. Question 22 is crazy.
There's adequate space, or you can use the platform. So
I
question
have
22
said
she's
that,
referring
but
to.
that's, I have said that. And but you're trusting that they will actually
So your real concern is they're not going to pay any attention to you?
not. I have said many times, do you know how many letters I have? And Marcia herself has engaged in dialogue with me defending the closed focus groups. With all due respect, it is not the planning division's place to address citizen concerns that are addressed to the committees. Okay, so they have, this is exactly what I'm talking about in my complaint when I stated in CCTV that I think there are town management departments that are marginalizing, dissenting, or radical, if you want to call it radical. There's nothing radical. This is about, I'm speaking on behalf of the public. I'm not making money.
Nobody called it radical
I know.
except you.
That's fine. I know that. I have spent my whole summer. I'm not getting paid for this. Alice knows I'm a concert pianist. I don't make that much money. I have concerts to plan. And I've spent my whole summer pursuing this, and I'm still repeating the same issues to you. This is why CCTV should stay independent, so I can just go shout these to people, because I shouldn't be questioned for, I'm exhausted, this is it. Citizens, it's up to you from now on. I have said all I can say, I've done all I can do, I have a life. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to just add, I do appreciate the amount of time that you have donated in countless meetings to sitting through the long-range plan and a lot of others, and I know what it takes to do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lori Gopazaris, 1376 Old Marlborough Road. I just have a quick question, because I know, Alice, that you've pointed out that there are opportunities to write things for certain questions, but it does appear to me that there really is a bias in the survey, and the bias is for development and business. Having said that, I'm also somewhat disturbed by notes that came out from a meeting the consultant had with senior town management. And the initial notes that came out had a section on tensions with the community. And I would say there were 10 tensions mentioned, and of those 10, probably 5 of them at least had to do with the environment, environmentalists, and terminology was used such as our town's environmental extremists. And there was concern over the water bottle bill and how the environmentalists did not understand the concerns and needs of business. I just think that's tipping the cart over. The town needs to be concerned about residents first and foremost, and that given our sustainability principles, we really have to support businesses who are willing and able to support our community values. And I don't think that it's appropriate for any town group to think in terms of one minor population, although in this community, having stemmed from Thoreau and Emerson, and being a very environmentally conscious community for a long time, I do think that every business that we encourage in this town has to be focused on maintaining a sustainable business and approach. Thank you.
Any other public comments? We'll now move on to committee.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
Public comments in general or public?
Sure, come right on up.
Okay. Carolyn Wilkins, Hillside Avenue. We wanted to publicly make the Board of Selectmen aware, I'm with Mothers Out Front of Concord, We wanted to publicly make the Board of Selectmen aware of an event. When you mentioned the parking plan forum might be in early October, I got a little nervous because I thought it would be the same day. It's not. We're hosting an event which is open to the full community on Wednesday, November 8th. It is a forum at First Parish. I came here, I spoke here a few minutes ago around gas leaks. Concord has 115, minimum 115 methane gas leaks in our community. Many citizens will know this issue. They've smelled this issue. I smell this issue every night when I walk my dog. But in all seriousness, it's a real issue, and this is going to be a really robust panel of experts who have been speaking all over the state of Massachusetts. We have 16,000 leaks in the state. It's a huge issue, and the communities are starting to really gel and come together to say, how can we work together with our respective, in our case, National Grid, our utility, to address the issue. So we're going to have speakers who are going to speak to the health ramifications of this amount of gas coming out in our community, the impact to the ecology, because this is a direct issue with our tree life and beyond. And then obviously we all know about the explosive nature, but the bigger point was that we want the community to know about this event and invite them. I think it's going to be a very informative panel. National Grid will be present, and we certainly would like your wonderful community to join us as well.
Say again where?
So it's Wednesday, November 8th, 7 p.m. at First Parish. We will be talking to various members of town board members on this in the coming days. Spoke with the fire chief today. We'll be speaking with, and beyond. So anyway, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Yes.
Bill Montague Gallery in Concord. I just wanted to inform you that I'm in the process of organizing the Concord Retail Association, which include the farmers and the restaurant owners and nonprofit organizations into one organization. And then we can pool our ideas, and this way we can feed you some information that you don't have now because we're not organized. So part of the problem is us by not being organized. You see, you're handicapped by not having information that we have, that we've isolated by ourselves, but we're not coming together. It's a matter of communication, and I think all of our problems can be solved by just communicating, and we're at fault for that, for not organizing our own organization. So I just want to let you know that.
Good luck. Well, thank you very much, 'cause I think that is very important to get that group. Anybody else?
Real quick.
Yes.
This is Booja Cookman on behalf of Mothers Out Front and the town survey and Envision Concord. I would ask that the board consider, or Chris, consider maybe modifying the survey slightly so people can make comments who complete it from now on, because I do think there are forcing questions in there that may not really represent what people are truly thinking, and sometimes people don't think about, oh, I can make it in the next section. So I would just take it seriously. I know how surveys can have impact and how they can be used, so I would just recommend kind of taking a look at that. I think it's worth doing.
Chris, what crossed my mind, and a number of comments were made, is given the importance of it, I mean, I think 25%, I don't know anything about this particular survey.
That's why I'm not judging that.
tends to be
Yeah,
a pretty good response rate.
I would
I
think.
do this for a living, but given the importance of it, I wonder if there is some mailing or something that that could re-alert the town to this Envision Concord website, and I don't know what it would be, and I don't want to foist an expense on the town, but
More lawn signs, Chris.
we have that alert system. I mean, can we do a reverse? I don't know.
Reverse alert. I don't know, but
I don't know about
I didn't get those
I don't know.
stickies on the paper. Sometimes there are those.
I just think there's enough issue with the way some of those questions are framed, et cetera, that's worth taking a look at and going forward, maybe doing some modification to give people an opportunity to have, as Lori recommended, an other or a comment, so that it's not forcing people to respond a certain way. Thank you for your consideration.
I think it does show that we need to get where technology is such that we're able to have communications with the citizens of the town in a better fashion. But that won't happen in the next 2 or 3 months. So that, I think we're now ready to move on to liaison reports. And I will note that it's only been a week since our last meeting.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Well, I actually did some
Hey,
work
wait.
last
Okay.
week.
Hey, wait, this is the good stuff.
I had the pleasure of attending the HATS meeting last week. The Massachusetts Joint Task Force was there, gave us a report on what they've been doing to support the military installations in the Commonwealth. A lot's been going on. They've been very supportive, helping all the military installations either consolidate with other groups, like at Hanscom, we have National Guard and many other units there, and finding funding to help them develop, like the Vandenberg Gate, the plans there, and things at Westover, and they've also gotten some good news. There has been no conversation regarding base closure or BRAC, and so that's been really comforting to hear that. So I think the Commonwealth's doing a great job with really making it, letting the public know and federal government know how integrated they are into the community and how much they're really a part of our state. So I also was able to have our kickoff meeting for our Affordable Housing Funding Committee. Todd Benjamin was made chair of that group. We definitely talked about schedule. They know it's a pretty tight timeline, but we still have to go through our orientation or education phase and enlightenment phase. So we're trying to get Regional Housing Director Liz Rust to come visit and give us an update on the state of affordable housing in Concord and the Commonwealth as well, and really enlighten them on kind of our situation, so that they get a better feel for, maybe what the focus would be on, et cetera. The group also had a lot of comments or questions about revenue generation, or what happens when, say, the building department does a great job in generating fees. Where's that go? Where's it, and also questions about different ways of either through fees or different ways of raising revenue in the town. What are we allowed to do, or have flexibility in different areas where that type of revenue can get generated, whether it's through different applications, an additional fee, or just across the board, type of tax, I guess, in the end. So we were hoping to schedule time with Kerry to come by and kind of enlighten us, and we'd probably generate a bunch of questions and send to them as well to make things a little easier. I think from then on, it would really be diving into those two areas, what to focus on, what the cost generation is. We'll also speak with Charles, the petitioner of Article 49, and also kind of get his insight into what his objectives were with his article at the time. And really just try to out of that group, pick something to focus on, and kind of.
Have they set up a schedule that's available now so that the public can attend the
Yes,
meeting?
we have to just start posting. We'll get that information to Andrew, all the dates. We're trying to meet twice a month, and I think we're off to a good start. I have
Any
one more
additional green cards?
Yeah, I have someone to nominate this evening.
Great.
Hopefully, I'm hoping we can do a nomination appointment for Elizabeth Eldon, who was previous planning board member, chair. So we're meeting next Tuesday. So it's would be great to make sure get an additional.
Been busy.
A little bit. But no, it was great to see everyone all very dedicated to finding ways to increase our affordable housing in town. So it was really nice to get them all together and started on the process.
Good. Alice, any?
I've attended a planning board meeting with a lot of discussion around the comprehensive long-range plan. Also attended White Pond Advisory Committee. They are deeply engaged in trying to understand the science of fish stocking and its potential implications on the water quality of the pond.
Fish stocking is done by the states, though, right?
It is, this pond is stocked by the state, but there are some concerns that it's adding to the phosphorus levels of the
Yeah,
pond.
no, but it is.
Looking into that.
I attended a school committee meeting, lots of business there. As with the regional meeting, they talked about district goals and evaluation of the superintendent. Did a first reading of calendar changes. It was a relatively straightforward activity. They discussed again transportation. It looks like things had settled down a little bit with the busing issue that they had a few weeks ago. And then I attended the Mass Municipal Association. I'm a member of the Fiscal Policy Committee. And the main order of business, there was taking a position on a sales tax ballot question that's going to come before the state in 2018. The Massachusetts Association of Retailers is proposing to reduce the sales tax. There was quite a long discussion, a presentation by Mr. Hurst, the president of the group, and then by Chris Dempsey, the director of transportation for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, who was opposed to it. And the board, the committee voted sort of unanimously to oppose the reduction in the sales tax. I think it was a sound decision that that recommendation would be made to the legislative bodies and the governor. But it will be on the ballot probably in 2018 nevertheless.
2018.
2018, yeah.
I had a conflict, so I missed the Board of Assessors meeting, but I said they were discussing the new assessments, the tax bills have gone out, and I think they're doing the senior tax exemption process, moving that along. So they've got a fairly full plate ahead of them as well.
Can I add one comment? Are you finished with yours?
Yes.
Can I add one comment that I've neglected to mention? Mike, when he had, maybe it was when you were chair, had tasked during a chair's breakfast committees to look at their charters and bring them in line to what they were doing now, look at whether there are any changes,
Little
whether they were still
modernization.
relevant.
Right.
And the White Pond Advisory Committee has been working on this now
Yep.
since that request. So I have a new version of a charter, which I'm reviewing, and I'll bring it to this committee probably, maybe at the next meeting or the one after for discussion.
Thanks to the
and
committee.
approval.
Appreciate it. I wasn't a liaison to something, but I would mention that the League of Women Voters had a very successful event on Wednesday, I think it was, where they had town moderators, past and present, from both Carlisle and Concord, and a very lively discussion, probably 60 people, would that be? 70 people there. It was a very, very effective event.
Miscellaneous and correspondence. I don't know if we have any particular.
I have one. We submitted, the select board on behalf of the town submitted an application for an award for our governance training workshop. Effective governance training. They had a call for innovation in government awards, and I thought that's a pretty good innovation.
Yeah.
I don't know, I
think
just
so.
submitted the
Why not?
application. We'll see if we get moved along, see what the judges
Is
have to
that the
say.
Mass Municipal?
Mass Municipal Association had a call for innovation in government awards. So we submitted the effective governance workshop to that. And I should also mention that I'm now on the Public Works and Utility Committee of the MMA. The first meeting of the season is later this month.
Good.
The annual meetings in January 10th and 11th in Boston. And,
Yep.
Yeah,
last
the
year.
whole
yeah.
calendar is in this.
Last year, we won a website, and
Right.
what was the other? We got a
Annual town report?
Finance
The
director
report.
report.
yeah,
Finance
yeah,
risk.
Yeah. So
That's great.
Keep up the good work, guys.
yeah,
I guess we'll put it under miscellaneous. I shared or sent out copies of this EPA administration's task force that was created to try to expedite remediation of supersite funds. They generated 42 recommendations, and it seems like there's some seriousness in Washington about it. They've actually assigned folks to kind of focus on each of the recommendations. The one that seemed interesting to the 2229 Main Street Committee was the selection by the EPA of selecting specific pilot sites that would, maybe gives them higher profile, that, projects are getting completed quicker. But it has the potential of allowing communities who may have reuse planning in place and are ready to become a partner in the completion of the remediation, to fast track the events to kind of get completed sooner rather than the current process. But I think 2229 Main Street Committee is still looking into it, trying to see what's really involved with this. But I'm thinking speak with Jane, maybe we'll have them come
I think that'd be
see
great.
us within a month or so, and maybe they'll have more information to share with us, and perhaps could generate articles related to starting a reuse plan, to formally have that in hand and see what the next steps are, to see if that's the pilot program, something we want to do.
being able to move that along would be
Yeah,
nice.
and I'm meeting with them tomorrow. I'll attend their meeting. I think they're meeting tomorrow, and maybe get some more information. So.
Terrific. Thank you.
Super.
Anybody else, or we're ready for the committee appointments?
All right, I nominate Laura Vanesi of 558 Bedford Street to the Youth Advisory Board for a term to expire May 31st, 2020. I also like to nominate, not on the agenda, but Elizabeth Eldon to the Affordable Housing Funding Committee for a term to expire, I guess it's May 31st of 2018, right? It's right after town meeting. Committee appointments, I move to appoint Sarah Grimwood of 520 Lexington Road, Sigmund Roos of 36 Wood Street, and Mark Hanson of 340 Holden Wood Road to the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2018.
Second? All those in, we don't have to,
You can't do that.
sorry.
Second?
Aye.
Aye. And I asked the board to see if this board's willing to approve a kind of same-day appointment, if,
Can I say something before you do that?
sure.
Is there going to be a vote taken by that committee before October 16th?
No, but I'm worried I may not have a quorum for the 10th, October 10th meeting.
Wait, the next meeting is October 10th?
Theirs is, ours is the 16th. I was going to say, if there was no vote taking, I'd like to
And
vote.
I would agree with that. I mean,
It's going to get you a quorum.
well, why don't we leave it as a nomination then? I don't want to rush.
Well, I don't think
Well,
it's,
no, you don't want to compromise having a quorum and
Yeah.
having to
Yeah.
cancel a meeting.
yeah, I'd rather, given the short fuse your committee has to get this work done, I think it's very important that we give some notice so that if there would be, although I can't remember it ever happening,
Yeah,
somebody going,
it's
"Whoa,
only
who is it?"
information gathering and kind of scheduling process right now,
So
so.
I'd support going ahead with it then, so.
Okay. So I move also to appoint Elizabeth Eldon of Old Bedford Road. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact address, Andrew. Yeah, she has a green card. To the Affordable Housing Funding Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye, thank you. And I move to reappoint Arthur Fullman of 64 Anursnack Hill Road to the Financial Audit Advisory Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I gather we are not going to have the executive
That's-
session, or?
That's right. So that matter will come up in 2
So
weeks.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
So second.
All in favor?
So in favor.
Aye.
Aye.
Steve, you have one signature here.